Hey y'all, Kevin here. Welcome to the video. I'm going to be doing something that I haven't done yet, and one that I probably should have done a long time ago at this point. I'm going to be doing a tier maker list video of every single design of Bumblebee in a mainline Transformers product. This is something that Zeke said I should have done like 6 or 8 months ago, and because I'm a lazy sack of shit, I didn't decide to do it until literally right now, on November 30th of 2022. So, sorry I'm late. Also, if I sound a little bit different from how I sounded on my Mario trailer reaction video, that is because I am not using this mic, which is connected to my headset. I'm using this mic, which I use for podcasts. I probably should have used this for the trailer reaction video, but I was too damn lazy to set it up, so oops. So I decided to pick out a series of Bumblebees from the Transformers franchise that represent a mainstream representation of the character. I just said represent twice. What the fuck is wrong with me? So these are the various different types of Bumblebee that have existed over the years in a mainstream capacity, and there's a lot to get into here, so I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time here. I'm just going to jump right into it. Just so you know, I am only counting mainstream cartoons and movies, but yeah, this is a list of all the major Bumblebees from TV, cartoons, and movies over the last, like, 30 plus years. Let's get into it. I'm not going to waste any more time. Okay, so the first one we're taking a look at here is movie Bumblebee. So this is the Bumblebee from the very first live-action movie directed by Michael Bay. Now, this Bumblebee was the first major Bumblebee ever since Generation 1. And they did quite an extensive reworking of his character. They reworked his horns into kind of these little ear things on the top of his head. They dramatically reworked his body. The original Bumblebee was a Volkswagen Beetle, whereas here, while he begins the movie as a Volkswagen Beetle, he transforms. Actually, no, he begins the movie as a Camaro. Oh god, they don't even make him a Beetle until. Oh god, they don't do that until the Bumblebee movie. Oh man. Well, I'll get to that eventually. But yeah, they begin the movie as a 70s Camaro, and then they turn him into a concept Camaro later. This is the concept Camaro version of Bumblebee, the one that he uses throughout the majority of his appearances in the movie. I really like this redesign of Bumblebee. It's very strong looking. It does a really good job of balancing the cute, approachable relatability of the character while also making him look like a very capable fighter, because he is a fighter. He's a soldier. He's been in a war for millions of years. He's got to look like he can handle his own in a fight. I think he does. I think this is a really good design. It's one of the more readable designs of the Bayverse movies. I think this is one design that they absolutely nailed. They absolutely knocked this one out of the park. It's a great design. I personally love it. I'm going to put movie Bumblebee in S tier because this is one of the definitive versions of Bumblebee. It's great. It fits the character. It's a little busy, but I feel it balances really well. It's recognizable at a glance. You can tell this is Bumblebee no matter what's happening on screen. It's a good design. I really like it. The next version of Bumblebee that we're going to be taking a look at is animated Bumblebee. So animated Bumblebee came out only a few months after the first Bayformers Bumblebee did. The design of this character is somewhere in between Generation 1 and Movieverse Bumblebee, because you have elements of his design that are clearly inspired by the Movieverse. You know, you got the wheels on the shoulders. You know, he's a little bit more lean. He's got a more of a clear figure in his silhouette. But you also have various elements that are G1 inspired. He's primarily yellow. He's a very small, compact car when he transforms, and he's got the little horns on his head, just like in Generation 1. I honestly really like this design. It's very distinct. It's very unique as far as Bumblebee designs go. You're going to find in a lot of these Bumblebee designs that there's just a combination of G1 and movie Bumblebee. So I really like this design. I think this is a great Bumblebee design. I'm putting this one also in S tier. I'm actually going to be shifting down the line a little bit here, and I am going to be going down to, what else? Generation 1 Bumblebee. Generation 1 Bumblebee is the Bumblebee everyone knows outside of the movies. This is the classic, original 1984 Generation 1 Bumblebee that everybody in the 80s grew up with, and everybody, understands this is classic B. And honestly, it's a solid-ass design. It does have the 1980s boxy robot aesthetic, and if you're not a fan of that, well, this isn't going to do a whole lot for you. It's the original boxy 1980s aesthetic. 1981B is a brick. He is a big yellow brick. And whether or not you actually like that or not is going to depend on the person. One thing I will say is a little bit weird about this character design is the hood of the car turns into his feet, and the cab turns into his chest. And I will admit, the feet look a little weird. But honestly, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think it really affects the design too much. So I actually personally really like this design. While I do personally prefer movie Bumblebee, I can't deny this is a great one. So I'm putting this one in A tier. It absolutely fits in A tier. So the next design we're taking a look at here is going to be Dark of the Moon Bumblebee. So Dark of the Moon Bumblebee is the first major redesign of the movie-verse version of Bumblebee, and this is where I'm starting to fall off when it comes to the design of these characters, because I'm not a huge fan of this version of Bumblebee. I don't think this version of Bumblebee is terribly visually interesting. The biggest issue I have is that they try to make him bulkier again. They try to make it look like he's been through a bit more, but unfortunately, I think they're beginning to lose some of that distinction in the character design. It's becoming a little too cluttered. This is a problem in the Bayverse designs that continues throughout the entire 5-movie series. This does not include the Bumblebee movie. At this point, that's its own separate entity, and I'm not counting it. This version of Bumblebee, I'm not really a huge fan of it. I think this is where the designs begin to fall off a little bit. It's not bad, but it's also not great. This is going to be the first one where I'm going to be giving it a bit of a middling rating. I'm putting Bumblebee here in the C tier because I don't think it's a great design. I really don't think it's a very good design. I know that there are people who really like this design, and you know what? More power to you. I'm not huge on it. I'm not huge on a lot of these later Bayverse designs, so make of that what you will. Okay, the next design we're going to be taking a look at is Age of Extinction Bumblebee. Going on from Dark of the Moon, the third movie, we're looking at Age of Extinction, the fourth Bayformers movie. Now, one thing that is very clear with this design is that they're trying to de-emphasize color as much as possible, and that's kind of a consistent thing with Age of Extinction. It's a very drab movie. It is all grays and blacks and browns and gunmetals, and it's not terribly visually engaging. And unfortunately, that design philosophy translates over into the robots, and that's not a good thing. The robots in Transformers need to be colorful because they need to be readily recognizable to the audience. Whether or not it's actually realistic in a disguise sense, whether or not it's realistic in a believable, real-world setting, doesn't really matter. These are toys at the end of the day. At the end of the day, even though you are making, what basically accounts as sci-fi war fiction, you're also making toys. You're making a toy commercial, so you need to be able to give the audience a very distinct and recognizable design, and I don't think they do a good job here. This Bumblebee is way too black. He's way too cluttered. God, I shouldn't have said that. God, that sounds terrible. Please don't take that the wrong way. It's not what I meant. Not what I meant. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of this design. This is really where the designs of the movies just kind of fall off after a point. So I am going to be putting Age of Extinction Bumblebee in the D tier. He's currently ranking very low. I'm going to go down the line yet again, and I'm going to bring it up to The Last Night Bumblebee. This, honestly, I hate The Last Night. I think it's a terrible movie, and generally speaking, I don't like the designs of the robots in the movie. I think, it moves further into the issue that the other Bayformers movies have of being too cluttered, de-emphasizing color, and not really having a whole lot of visual distinction for each individual robot. At this point in the series, I think Bay's kind of lost the plot. That said, I like this Bumblebee. It brings it closer to something resembling the first movie. Color is actually being re-emphasized here on Bumblebee. He's a lot more yellow, and he's actually got some nice bluish tones to his metal, and I think that's really good. It gives him more of like this futuristic chrome look that I think really works. It's sleek, it's kind of, it's pretty nice. I actually really like this design. I think it's solid. I don't think it's as good as the first movie's design, but I think it's head and shoulders above the other designs. It is still pretty busy, but it is recognizable instantly as Bumblebee, and it's not a design that's going to be easily lost in the crowd of other things happening in the scenes. Like, one thing I will say about The Last Night, I never lost track of Bumblebee on the screen, that's for sure. I lost track of literally everything else, but Bumblebee, I could tell him out. I could figure him out at a glance. It's a solid design. It's got some interesting takes on the existing Bumblebee design from the Transformers movies. I think it's okay. I'm going to put this one in B. I might have to reorder some of this later, but I am putting The Last Night Bumblebee in the B category. That's just where it's going to land right now. Alright, the next design I'm going to be placing is one of my personal favorite designs of Bumblebee of all time, Transformers Prime Bumblebee. Transformers Prime Bumblebee is very clearly based on how Bumblebee appears in the Bayformers movies, but they do a really good job of simplifying and streamlining that design and making him very visually distinct. Very cute, actually. This is a very cute design for Bumblebee. There is one cuter, and I will get to him when we get to him, but I personally really like this design. I think it's great. I think it's kind of the perfect ideal of what Bayformers Bumblebee should look like, so I am putting this one right in between Bayverse Movie 1 and Animated Bumblebee. Prime Bumblebee is in S tier. I love that design, though admittedly I am biased because I love Transformers Prime. Okay, the next Bumblebee that we're going to be taking a look at is Robots in Disguise Bumblebee. Now, Robots in Disguise is a direct sequel to the Transformers Prime cartoon, which I just ranked, so I'm naturally going to the sequel next. RIDB is an interesting one because this take on the character of Bumblebee is trying to be a little bit more of a teenage young adult character, whereas the original Bumblebee was more of a kid appeal or a young teen character who's, kind of trying to come into his own as a character, as a person. Here, the character is older. He's trying to take on responsibilities. He's trying to be a good team leader, a good team player. And this is also the first time that he's consistently voice acted by Will Friedle, specifically. So they had to significantly redesign the character from how he appeared in Transformers Prime to kind of fit this new direction. The design of this character actually takes a lot of inspiration from Hot Shot from Transformers Armada, I notice. He's a lot bulkier up top. And unfortunately, I think the bulkiness up top kind of makes the design a little bit unbalanced. That's probably the biggest issue that I have here, is that he looks top heavy, but I think it's a decent design because it's trying to go for a more matured, more adult, but still kind of learning the ropes type of character, trying to be a leader. He looks stronger. He looks distinct. He's got an interesting jawline. But no, yeah, I think this is a good design. It's solid. It's pretty good. I'll slap this one in A tier. It's going right next to G1. All right. So the next design I'm going to be taking a look at, I did say mainstream cartoons. And at the same time that both Prime and Robots in Disguise were airing, there was another Transformers cartoon on television. And that was Transformers Rescue Bots. And yes, Bumblebee does appear in there. Inconsistently, only in cameos, only in guest spots, but he is in the movie series Why did I say movie? There's no Rescue Bots movie. Anyway, Bumblebee's here. And I don't like it. This is not a very good design. It looks a little bit too alien. It's very clearly trying to take the Prime design and simplify it to work with the Flash-style animation that Rescue Bots has. Unfortunately, I think what this design lacks is just a lot of the more appealing elements of that Bayformers-inspired design that Transformers Prime did a really good job of capturing. It takes an already streamlined design and tries to streamline it further, and I think by buffing out as many of the edges as they can, they kind of lost something in the process, and that's my biggest issue. It kind of loses something in the design. It doesn't look terribly good, it doesn't look terribly appealing, it just looks weird, for lack of a better term. Not too big on this one, so unfortunately, you're going right next to Age of Extinction B. You're going in the D tier. Now, on the other hand, a Bumblebee design that I really like is the Rescue Bots Academy Bumblebee design. This goes a little bit closer to what is often referred to as the Evergreen Transformers designs. Evergreen Transformers designs are created by Hasbro as a way for them to market Transformers toy lines outside of existing Transformers media, such as existing comics, cartoons, and movies. It's kind of their take on a genericized Transformers design philosophy, and this is definitely moving in that direction. It's got kind of a cross between Bayformers B and G1B, and you're going to be seeing a lot of that throughout a lot of these designs going forward. They're trying to keep a little bit of the design aesthetic of both intact, and there is one design I'm going to be taking a look at later that really does a great job of like melding the two together in a very coherent way. Rescue Bots Academy B is actually pretty good. I'm going to be putting Rescue Bots Academy B up in the B tier. I'm going to put him directly next to the Last Night B. What a weird place for him to be. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at a Bumblebee that, as you probably noticed, I have an extra tier at the bottom of this list. Something that happens a lot in Transformers is G1 nostalgia baiting. And that is a very common tactic that Hasbro tends to employ when they need easy money. One design that is literally just as close to G1 as you can get without just completely aping the G1 design 100% is War for Cybertron Trilogy B. This particular design of Bumblebee is just, it's flat out G1. It's got the classic boxy aesthetic, it's got very little else to distinguish it from the original Generation 1 design, which is currently sitting in A tier. It's literally just a slightly different take on Generation 1 Bumblebee. War for Cybertron Trilogy B goes in the literally G1 tier. Sorry, B, them's the breaks. The next B we're taking a look at here is Cyberverse B. This is one of my favorite designs of Bumblebee. This is the other Bumblebee design that is very clearly based on the evergreen aesthetic that genericized Transformers toys go for. And as far as evergreen-inspired Bumblebee goes, this is a great one. I always really liked Cyberverse's visual design. It has this kind of like anime-inspired aesthetic, but it's not, you know, anime. It's, you know, kind of a westernized take on, you know, a stylized cartoon anime aesthetic. It's kind of in that ballpark, but I really like this design. It's got that cool guy, petulant attitude. It's got a little bit of that youthful spark that some of these other bees tend to have. Bumblebee is the young character. He's the young scout that's learning the ropes. He's, you know, trying to be a better character. He's trying to be a better warrior, a better person, a better friend. This is a cool-ass Bumblebee design. I love it. I just think it's a really good marrying together so many elements of Bumblebee's visual design and personality from over the years. I think this one's fantastic. So, Cyberverse Bumblebee, moving on up. I'm going to put him right at the bottom of S tier. This is a great design. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put him a little bit above Animated B, actually. This is a really good design. I really like it. It's super well balanced. It's got a little bit of the G1B with like the horns and, you know, the hood of the car becoming the legs, but it also has a bit of the Movieverse B with the shoulder kibble. I think it's great. It's a great design. S tier for sure. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the Bumblebee movie version of Bumblebee. When the Bumblebee movie came out, one of the very clear, distinctive elements of this movie was the design aesthetic trying to simplify the Bayverse designs and give the characters more G1 inspired looks. A lot of the other Transformers in this movie are G1 inspired. You know, there's Optimus, Shockwave, Soundwave, that kind of thing. Bumblebee is an interesting one because his design is very clearly inspired by the Movieverse Bumblebee, but like the G1 Bumblebee, he turns into a Volkswagen Beetle. And this is the first time he's turned into a Volkswagen Beetle since Generation 1. The design of this character is rounded out. He's very spherical, for lack of a better term. They made him look a lot younger, a lot cuter, a lot more vulnerable, and honestly, it's one of the most charming designs for Bumblebee out there. It doesn't really have quite as much of that, you know, warrior aesthetic that you expect from Bumblebee, but I think that's fine because most of Bumblebee in that movie is kind of just trying to remember who he is and trying to, you know, rekindle that warrior spark. I think this is a really good design for that. For what they were doing in the movie, for what they were trying to do, I think it's fantastic. It's really right up there with the original Bayformers B. It's just a great design in general. I'm going to put that right here in the dead middle of S tier, right in between Cyberverse and Prime B, because Prime B is basically just a simplified Bayverse B. And finally, the most recent Bumblebee that we have on the list, Earthspark Bumblebee. Transformers Earthspark is the newest Transformers cartoon at the time of this video's release, and Bumblebee's design is, again, a design that kind of uses a bit of the evergreen aesthetic, but it also tries to do something a little bit more of its own thing. It's got a little bit more movie inspiration in the chest area, making him look a little bit bulkier in the chest. The shoulder kibble is, again, very prominent, as well as the shoulder wheels. It's very much an evergreen designed Bumblebee. I don't think it hits quite as well as Cyberverse Bumblebee does, but I do think it's a really solid design. And that's saying quite a bit because I'm not huge on a lot of the designs in Earthspark in general. As much as I don't like, you know, the general look of Earthspark personally, I actually quite like Bumblebee here. He's not as good as Cyberverse B, and that does knock him down pretty far. Like, there's just a better evergreen-inspired B, and that's Cyberverse. But Earthspark B is really solid. I think he does a really good job of looking like, you know, he's been around the block. He's, you know, a tough warrior, a tough soldier. As it stands, it's hard for me to put him in S tier, and honestly, he doesn't have enough distinction from other versions of Bumblebee to make him an A tier. So he's solid, but nothing special. I'm going to put him at the bottom of B tier. And that's the tier list. In S tier, we have the first Movieverse version of Bumblebee from the 2007 movie. We have Bumblebee from the Transformers Prime cartoon. We have Bumblebee from the Bumblebee movie from 2018. We have Cyberverse Bumblebee, and we have animated Bumblebee. Great versions of Bumblebee, all of them very distinct, very unique, very good representations of the character. In A tier, we have Generation 1 Bumblebee, the classic, the original. The boxy aesthetic can take a little bit getting used to compared to a lot of the other people here, but it's still really good. It's iconic. It's how Bumblebee looked for the longest time. This is iconic for a very good reason. Sharing the A tier is Robots in Disguise Bumblebee. He's a little bit older, he's a little bit more petulant, he's a little top heavy, but I think it's a really solid design that showcases the direction of the show really, really well. Over in B tier, we have Rescue Bots Academy Bumblebee, another Evergreen inspired design, but an Evergreen inspired design that I quite like. There is a better Evergreen inspired design in S tier, but as far as these go, this one goes here at the top of B tier. We have the Last Night Bumblebee, also taking up B tier. It's a solid reintroduction of a lot of the elements that made the first Bayformers Bumblebee design so good. It doesn't quite hit the same mark, but it is pretty solid. And finally, we have Earthspark Bumblebee. Earthspark Bumblebee is once again an Evergreen-inspired design, but much like Rescue Bots Academy Bee, it doesn't hit the same as Cyberverse Bumblebee. So unfortunately, it goes here. Rocking out in C tier is Dark of the Moon Bumblebee. This one is just a little bit too busy, it's a little bit too gray, it's a little bit too all over the place for my liking. It's not quite as bad as what starts off D tier, but it is not necessarily a great design. It's serviceable, it's functional, but it's not particularly good. Rocking out the beginning of D tier is, unfortunately, Age of Extinction Bumblebee. Age of Extinction is one of my least favorite Transformers movies, and unfortunately, this particular design doesn't really do the film any favors. Bumblebee's very distinctive bright yellow color scheme, it's starting to get lost under all that chrome. You're really starting to lose what makes Bumblebee distinct, what makes him memorable, what makes him unique, and as a result, you begin to lose him on the screen. I don't think this is a particularly good design. Unfortunately, I have to put it in D tier. At the very bottom of the list, with the exception of the literally G1 tier, we have Rescue Bots Bumblebee, trying to take the already streamlined, beautifully streamlined Prime Bumblebee design and trying to streamline it further. It kind of misses the mark and just makes him look like a weird alien, which, admittedly, he is a weird alien, but he's also supposed to be likable. I don't like this very much, so unfortunately, D tier for this particular design. And in literally G1 tier is War for Cybertron Bumblebee. The War for Cybertron trilogy is literally just G1. All G1 aesthetics, just very gritty, very dark and scuffed G1 aesthetics. Still G1, so it's going in the literally G1 tier. And that's it. That is the entire tier list for every mainline design of Bumblebee in a TV, cartoon, or film. TV show, cartoon, or film. I need to think before I talk. So, what'd you think? Leave a comment down below, subscribe if you want more of this, and you can follow me on Twitter at CCharmanderK. I'm also on the Baka Gaijin show over on Zeke Freak's channel. We do new episodes every Saturday, and the episodes are uploaded every late Sunday or early Monday. Until next time, my name's Kevin. I'll see y'all later.